Two cops made me, a 9-year-old, scrub the street while they laughed and filmed it. By the time I got home, I was broken, but my dad wasn't about to let it go. What happened next? Buckle up. Let me tell you right off the bat. This story isn't for the faint-hearted. I'm not joking. You know those days when the universe decides to slap you in the face just because? Yeah, that was exactly the kind of day I was having. My name's Amelia Johnson, but everyone calls me Amy. I'm 9 years old, and trust me, I don't have time for anyone's nonsense. I live in this suburban neighborhood where all the houses look like they were copy-pasted out of a catalog, but hey, it's home. So picture this. It's one of those hot, sticky Georgia afternoons where even the birds are like, nope, not today. I was walking back from the park, my sneakers squeaking on the pavement, when I saw them. Two white cops leaning against their patrol car like they owned the damn street. Sunglasses on, smug grins plastered across their faces like they just stepped out of a low-budget action movie. I didn't want to make eye contact. I mean, who would? But of course, life had other plans. Hey, you, one of them barked, pointing straight at me. Now I'm 9, not stupid. Every cell in my body was screaming, keep walking, Amy, just keep walking. But my feet? Oh no, they had a mind of their own. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart doing somersaults. Yes, you, the other cop chimed in, his grin growing wider. Come here for a second. I should have said no. I wanted to say no. But let's be real. When two cops call you over, saying no isn't exactly an option. So, like the naive little kid I was, I shuffled over, clutching my backpack like it was some kind of shield. You live around here? The first one asked, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. Yeah, I stammered. He exchanged a look with his partner, and I swear, they both smirked like they were in on some private joke. That's when I noticed it. A big, dirty puddle smack dab in the middle of the street with muddy streaks running down the asphalt like someone had spilled a bucket of filth. Perfect, the second cop said, grabbing a mop and a filthy bucket from the back of their car. I blinked. Perfect for what? You want to be a good citizen, don't you? The first one asked, his voice dripping with fake politeness. Sure, I said, though it came out more like a question. Great. Then you won't mind cleaning this up for us, he said, shoving the mop into my hands. What the actual hell? I don't think I can, I started, but he cut me off. Of course you can. It's not rocket science, sweetheart. Just mop it up, he said, pointing to the puddle like it was some kind of moral obligation. His partner burst out laughing like this was the funniest thing he'd seen all week. I stood there, holding that disgusting mop, my brain short-circuiting. Was this even legal? Could they do this? But before I could protest, the first cop leaned in, his voice low and threatening. Listen, kid, you don't want to make this harder than it has to be. Just do it. And just like that, my options disappeared. My hands were shaking as I dipped the mop into the bucket, the water splashing onto my shoes. Great. Just great. The cops leaned against their car, watching me like I was some kind of live entertainment. One of them pulled out his phone, probably recording the whole thing. Smile for the camera, sweetheart, he said, laughing. I wanted to throw the mop at his face. I wanted to scream, cry, anything. But all I could do was scrub that filthy pavement while they jeered and made comments like, oh, you missed a spot, and look at her go, she's a natural. The humiliation was unbearable. And the worst part? Cars were driving by and people were looking. Some slowed down, probably wondering what the hell was going on, but no one stopped. Not a single person. One guy in a beat-up sedan did roll down his window, though. What's going on here? He asked, his brow furrowed. Community service, one of the cops replied, smirking. The guy looked at me, then back at the cops. For a second, I thought he might say something, but instead, he just shook his head and drove off. And that's when it hit me. I was on my own. No one was coming to save me. What happens next? Well, let's just say this wasn't the end of it. Not even close. You know when life hits you with the "it could be worse" card? And then it actually gets worse. That was me, standing there, with a mop that weighed more than my pride, scrubbing a dirty street under the watchful eyes of two cops who clearly thought they were the kings of comedy. Come on, kid, you missed a spot, one of them called out, leaning against the patrol car like this was some kind of talent show. Really showing us that work ethic, the other added, laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. My arms were aching, my shoes were soaked, and I was pretty sure I wasn't cleaning anything, just moving dirt around. But before I could even process how humiliating this was, things escalated. A group of teenagers rolled up on their bikes, their curiosity piqued. Hey, what's she doing? One of them shouted, stopping to gawk. Community service, one of the cops replied, smirking like this was some kind of life lesson for me. The teens whispered among themselves, but instead of helping, they just rode off. Great. Another reminder that I was on my own. I think it's done. I said quietly, hoping they'd let me go. But nope. One of them crouched down to inspect my work, then shook his head. Do it again, he said flatly, like I hadn't just been standing there for what felt like an eternity. Just as I was about to lose it, someone walked up. A woman in sunglasses with her phone out, filming everything. What's going on here? She asked sharply. Nothing to see, ma'am, one of the cops said, trying to wave her off. She wasn't buying it. Doesn't look like nothing to me. Why is this kid mopping the street? It's just a lesson in responsibility, the other cop replied, clearly uncomfortable now. Oh, it's a lesson, all right, she snapped, pointing her phone directly at them. This is going online, right now. The cops exchanged nervous glances. All right, kid, you're done, one of them muttered, tossing the mop aside. I didn't wait for a second invitation. I grabbed my backpack and ran, my heart racing and my face burning with a mix of shame and relief. When I got home, I collapsed on the porch, too tired to even cry. But something told me this wasn't the end of it, not by a long shot. You'd think after that mess, things would settle down, right? Wrong. I barely had time to catch my breath when Mom saw me trudging up the driveway, covered in grime and looking like I'd lost a fight with a dumpster. Amelia, what on earth happened to you? She asked, rushing out like she was about to faint. I wanted to explain, but the words got stuck in my throat. How do you even begin to describe something like that? All I managed was a shaky, I'm fine, Mom. Fine? You're a mess. She crouched down, brushing dirt off my clothes like that would fix anything. Tell me what happened. Before I could answer, the door opened. And there he was, Dad. And let me tell you, my dad doesn't just enter a room, he commands it. Even in his casual clothes, he looked every bit the man who doesn't take nonsense from anyone. What's going on here? His voice was calm, but you could feel the tension underneath. Mom started explaining, but it came out in pieces. Look at her. What happened to you? She asked again, spinning back to me. That's when I broke. I spilled everything. The cops, the mop, the humiliation. Every detail tumbled out like water from a broken dam. By the time I finished, Mom's face was pale and Dad's expression stone cold. They did what? He said, his tone so even it sent chills down my spine. I nodded, unsure if I should say more. Without another word, Dad grabbed his phone and walked into his office, shutting the door behind him. That's when I knew things were about to get serious. Mom tried to comfort me, but even she kept glancing at the closed door, her lips pressed into a thin line. The rest of the night was tense. Dinner was quiet, except for the occasional clatter of forks on plates. Every few minutes, Dad's phone buzzed, and he'd step away to take a call. I had no idea what he was doing, but the look in his eyes said it wasn't going to end well for those two cops. By the time I went to bed, I was too exhausted to think about anything else. But deep down, I knew, whatever Dad was planning, those officers weren't ready for it. The next morning, the vibe in our house was different. You could feel it, like the calm before a storm. Dad had already left before I woke up, and Mom was pacing the kitchen, her phone clutched in one hand and a coffee mug in the other. She wasn't drinking the coffee, just holding it, staring at nothing in particular. Mom, what's going on? I asked, even though I had a feeling I knew. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she sighed and said, Your father, he's handling it. That didn't exactly clear things up, but I let it go. I didn't have a choice. Later that afternoon, I was sitting on the porch when Dad's car pulled into the driveway. He stepped out, calm as ever, but the way he adjusted his tie told me things had happened. Amelia, he said, his tone measured but serious, come inside. I followed him to the living room where he gestured for me to sit. Mom joined us, looking nervous. You're probably wondering what's going on, Dad started, his voice steady. Let's just say, those officers won't be bothering anyone anymore. My eyes widened. What do you mean? Dad smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said, I've got this under control. I had a conversation with their department. Turns out this wasn't their first incident, but it will be their last. They've been suspended pending an investigation. Suspended? Mom asked, clearly wanting more. Don't worry, Dad added. I made sure the right people know what happened. There's a camera in their patrol car. Let's just say the footage speaks for itself. I sat there, stunned. Dad wasn't just my dad, he was the guy people didn't want to mess with. And now, those cops, they were feeling it. What happens now? I asked quietly. Now, Dad said, leaning back in his chair, we wait. But trust me, they won't get away with it. For the first time since this nightmare started, I felt something close to relief. Dad had done what I couldn't. He'd fought back. That night, the news broke. There they were, those two cops, their names plastered across the screen with words like suspension an investigation following close behind. My heart raced as I watched the reporter explain everything, from the footage to the growing public outcry. Mom sat next to me, her hand on my shoulder. "See?" she whispered. "You're stronger than you think, and we've got your back." I didn't say anything, but for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again.